Good morning, this is Michael Buckner. We will be beginning our program within approximately 1 minute. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to Buckner's webinar, Disease Outbreak Investigations, Lessons Learned from a Rhabdomyolysis Outbreak Inquiry. My name is Michael Buckner. I am an attorney and service president of Buckner and will serve as the co-presenter for today's program. Before we begin, let's review some housekeeping items. First, this program is being recorded. You can view the video of this webinar as well as other Buckner outlined online workshops on our website, bucknersportslaw.com, or our YouTube channel, which you can search for Michael Buckner Law. Second, you received via email earlier today several documents, including the PowerPoint presentation and the workshop handout. You will receive a link to the materials again in an email that will be sent immediately after the program. The email also will contain links or opportunities for you to download it in an evaluation form. Email me at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com if you did not receive the materials. Third, your phones will be muted during the webinar. Fourth, we'll have a question and answer session during 3 portions of the webinar. The first session will occur approximately 20 minutes into the program. The second chance will occur at 40 minutes into the webinar. And the final opportunity will be conducted at the end of the webinar. If you would like to ask a question, email it to me at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com. I will answer as many questions as time permits. Finally, if you cannot see the PowerPoint slides through the Meeting Burner webinar system, exit the system, and when you log back into Meeting Burner, be sure to download the screen sharing app indicated in the screen. The objectives and benefits for today's program include reviewing the initial steps that the organization should consider when a disease outbreak occurs, discussing the importance of developing a media and communication strategy, outline the most effective methods to address legal issues and to investigate the cause of the outbreak, discovering the protocols that should be used in working with relevant third parties, and developing strategies to deal with the post-outbreak environment. I have a distinct pleasure of introducing the co-presenter of today's program, Dr. Monica Mendez-Grant. Dr. Mendez-Grant holds a doctorate degree in higher education administration, a master's degree in counseling, and a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of North Texas. She has over 20 years' experience in various areas of student life, including student access and success, student development, orientation, judicial affairs, and auxiliary services. Dr. Mendez-Grant has 3 main research interests. 1, first-generation college students and best practices for retention. 2, increasing the college-going rate of first-generation high school students, particularly Hispanic students. And 3, developing best practices in at-risk high schools, which will increase the college-going rate of first-generation high school students, particularly Hispanic students. Dr. Mendez-Grant, through various partnerships within student life, actively seeks funds to support outreach efforts within the Dallas and Fort Worth communities. Dr. Mendez-Grant enjoys spending time with her family, her many animals, and her horses. She is originally from San Antonio, Texas. Dr. Mendez-Grant, welcome and thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to being a part of today's program.
Well, Dr. Mendez-Grant, let's begin our program. Our program again today outlines the lessons and best practices learned from the findings of the external investigation conducted by Buckner involving the women's volleyball sports team at Texas Women's University. The external investigation, which was launched to obtain objective information to identify the cause of the August 2016 hospitalization of women's volleyball student athletes with rhabdomyolysis. Rhabdomyolysis is a syndrome which is caused by a direct or indirect muscle injury, resulting from the death of muscle fibers and a release of their contents into the bloodstream. So first start off, Dr. Mendez-Grant, could you provide the participants with an overview of the incident and how Texas Women's University was first made aware of the outbreak?
Certainly. These events happened a year ago in 2016. We have 18 student athletes who are on the women's volleyball team at TWU, and all of those student athletes reported to the campus on Thursday, August 11th, 2016. They all reported in to the university in various states of fitness. And just to kind of provide you with a little background information about the university and our athletic program, TWU is a Division II program with, and we participate and compete in the NCAA program. On Friday, which is the day after our students checked into the campus, our season began with team meetings and medical evaluations. And on that same Friday, our students also attended an athletics training session. That weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, August 13th and 14th, our coaching staff took our students bowling to a local arcade in the Dallas area and to a place, it's Top Golf. It's kind of a swing practice. And both of the activities were designed so that our student athletes could get to know one another and also to increase the opportunities for team building for our student athletes. Our team, our volleyball team began their athletically related activities on that Monday, August 15th. And those activities included things like preseason games with the local community college, preseason workouts, and athletic training sessions. At 8:30 on that Monday morning, the women's volleyball staff conducted the first fitness test for our student athletes. One of the things that I thought you might want to know is that this particular year, we did something a little bit different with regard to those fitness tests, and we changed the way that we timed those particular tests. We moved away from the types of exercises a student could complete in a given time period to providing specific timed exercises. So in other words, the students had to complete exercises within a given time frame. We also began with asking our students to perform various kinds of drills and jogging. That first fitness test on that Monday morning consisted of 3 rounds of 10 box jumps, a crab walk, and a burpee from the half court to the end line, and then 2 laps around the basketball court. The student athletes were told that they needed to complete that first round of fitness tests in under 8 minutes. All our student athletes passed that first fitness test. The coaching staff then awarded the students with their practice gear after that first fitness test, and that particular test was developed by our part-time strength and conditioning coach. And after the morning session, the students completed an ice bath. They were then provided a break between the morning and afternoon. At 3:30 on Monday, they conducted a 2-hour practice. And at that practice, the students completed their second fitness test. That consisted of 2 300s, which were done on the basketball court 6 times and back, and they needed to complete that in under 72 seconds. All of our student athletes passed their second test, and they were awarded with their uniforms after that particular second fitness test. The university was not able to identify any particular issues after Monday. On Tuesday, their second day to report to the campus with athletically related activities, our part-time conditioning coach conducted a weightlifting and conditioning training workout. The students cooled down. There was again a break and an afternoon training session. On Wednesday, students played a scrimmage with an area college in the morning, and that afternoon, TWU staff demonstrated a mock run of a fitness test. The students were given a time limit to complete this new fitness test, which would be scheduled for the next morning on Thursday. On Thursday morning, the university administered the third fitness test, and that test included burpees, squats, and tricep push-ups. Like the previous test before them, there was a stretch break, and what we know now is that some of our students immediately sensed that there may have been an issue, and our students began talking to one another about experiencing some unusual soreness. On that same day, we had an afternoon practice which lasted 2 hours and a 1.5-hour weightlifting session. By the next morning, which was Friday morning, our students began to complain to one another again about unusual soreness, but those complaints now also included a limited range of motion and swelling. And as a result of the concerns from the students that morning, our athletic trainer did ask students to drink more water because of the soreness they were experiencing. That same morning on Friday, we conducted a 1.5-hour weightlifting session, and our students came back in the afternoon for another practice. By that afternoon, according to the records of our athletic trainers, 5 of our student athletes complained about soreness, about swelling, and about limited range of motion, and students were told to limit their range of motion and to limit weight-bearing exercises. Earlier you heard Michael ask me to talk about when did the case begin, and I guess I would say that the case would really began for us on Saturday, August 20th, when one of the women volleyball student athletes was admitted to the hospital. And then on Sunday, August 21st, 7 more volleyball student athletes were admitted to the local hospital. The treating medical professionals determined the student athletes were suffering from rhabdo, which is that disorder that Michael Buckner described earlier, and it releases a breakdown of muscle tissue into the bloodstream and can be fatal, and it can also lead to kidney failure. TWU could not ascertain whether the outbreak was caused initially by exercises, by workout conditions, by dehydration. Were there other causes? So we knew immediately that we had some issues to address. I thought it important that you might want to know that I did not receive any kind of information from our athletic staff until Sunday afternoon, when we started admitting large numbers of those students to the hospital. So that was would have been the very first time that anyone outside of the athletic area was informed that we had a situation we needed to potentially address.
Thank you, Dr. Mendez-Grant. I appreciate that summary of the entire week that led up to the hospitalization. Now looking back, what lessons did you and the university learn about initially responding to a disease outbreak, whether it be rhabdo or any other outbreak?
Well, I think you can tell by probably my comments earlier that I would have liked to have been notified earlier with the very first student being hospitalized. So I think one of the things that we have learned now is that we have a much more standardized protocol about who has responsibility for reporting student hospitalizations and how we're going to report those items to the university. All students also encouraged before any workouts that they should report any signs of concerns to the coaching staff or athletic training staff immediately. And in retrospect, it would have been a sign of goodwill for the university to have immediately sent staff to the hospital with our students. That is not something WU did at that particular time. We just did not do that, and I wish in retrospect that's something we would have done at the time. Michael, are you there? Okay.
Dr. Mendez-Grant?
Yes.
I apologize. There was a issue on my end of the line.
Okay.
Well, did any outside agencies become involved once the disease outbreak was known about in the university community?
Yes. So as I understand it, at least in Texas, the hospital is required by law to identify to the local health department when there's any kind of cluster phenomena. So the county health department was notified when those 7 students did go to the hospital in our town where the university is located. The county health department was notified immediately, and they began their investigation immediately. I was, as you recall, I was notified about the incidents on Sunday afternoon, and I was already being interviewed by the county health department on that following Monday morning. The director of public health also began conducting interviews with students while they were still hospitalized, and that began also on that Monday morning. And he released his first public statement to the media on that same Monday. Later, as we were actually moving through the course of the investigation, we did receive inquiries from the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. The FDA was primarily concerned with any kind of correlation that they could potentially make between usage of supplements and the rhabdo outbreak. And so that would be the other agency that I can think of that comes to mind in terms of people who wanted to be involved with our particular case.
Well, you mentioned the county health department and the FDA involved in the outbreak investigation. How would you advise organizations, whether it be universities, sports leagues, or anyone relating to athletics, how do those organizations coordinate with outside agencies during the outbreak investigation?
So what I would say, my best advice for anyone who has a situation that's going like that is to immediately ask your athletic director to do his or her best to begin to coordinate a timeline with all relevant staff that had involvement with the student athletes, and then that you obtain support from the administration of the university to support the athletic program by providing personnel who understand and appreciate the athletic program and who can help to organize around various constituency groups. For example, here at TWU, when I understood what would be happening with the Denton County health department, I did ask our Director for Student Health Services, who works with the county during emergency outbreaks and has some experience in working with our county officials, to serve as the university liaison. She did, before he did start interviewing with students, she did make contact with him, and then she and I would meet where she was able to provide her own expertise to help guide the university through our response. The FDA, we actually coordinated through our investigator, which is Michael Buckner. Parents, we chose to coordinate through Student Life. I serve as the Vice President for Student Life. I provided parents with my direct cell phone number, and early on we assigned somebody that we titled a Student Life Advocate. This is someone at TWU who currently served as a basketball coach for the university and has gone on to work in various roles. She's now presently the supervisor of our recreation center, and she was assigned to serve as a student life advocate, and she had the role of answering student athletes' questions outside of athletics, and we thought it was important to assure students of their ability to make inquiry and to provide them with some anonymity as best we could about some of the different kinds of questions they had at the university. All media inquiries were directed to go through the university, which was marketing and communication, and we did receive some inquiries from various general counsels, and those kinds of calls were directed through our general counsel at the university.
Well, I appreciate going into that, because you mentioned at the very end about media inquiries, and that's the next major topic of our program. How did the university address the media and campus constituencies before, during, and after this outbreak?
So, my recommendation would definitely be to be intentional in how the university communicates and to whom it communicates. We made a decision very early on regarding our communication strategy. I would meet each morning with our marketing and communication folks, and we made a decision that we would release information to our internal constituencies, our faculty, staff, and alumni. We would release any kind of statements we wanted to make between the hours of noon and 1 o'clock. And then if we were going to release any other statements, we would do that between the afternoon, between 2 and 3 o'clock, to various outlets. I would also suggest you make a choice about which platforms that you want to use to address a media challenge. To maintain the most control for us, we chose to use press releases each day. I produced the internal messages that were sent to the university community, and rather than granting individual interviews with different papers and media agencies, towards the end of the week, so by Friday I had I was doing press releases and doing them at one time of the day in the afternoon. The other thing that I would say is that I think it's really important that the institution have a consistent voice around what might be a media challenge. At TWU, we said that would come through the Vice President for Student Life, and that we would make the focal point the idea that our students are first, and that we wanted to really hone in on that as the most important message. And we also try to not ask our individual coaches or athletic directors to serve as the people responding to most of the inquiries, so we could best objectify the message that we were delivering.
You talk about this coordinated message. why is it so important to have a coordinated media and communication strategy during an outbreak, disease outbreak investigation?
I would suggest that to maintain that it's important to have a coordinated media and communication strategy to maintain control of the message. So that's why I'm recommending a deliberate strategy.
Okay. And as we're wrapping up this section of our program, again, just going back to what you and the university community experience, what other lessons can you share with us about dealing with the media during the disease outbreak investigation?
So I would say the number one takeaway is that you take control of the situation by developing the message that you want to give. One of the things that I do before I ever will meet with any media is that I decide on what are the three things that I want to get across to the media, and I work to get those same messages across no matter what the question is that's asked of me. When you think about the kinds of interviews that you're seeing on television, you really don't ever see the questions that people are asking. You only are hearing the response. So I think going into the meeting knowing what those messages are going to be, despite the questions, is an important one. Be sincere, I would say, and authentic, and developing a message that's consistent with your community. There's that saying that culture trumps strategy every time, and so I think staying true to the culture that's at your institution is certainly an important one. And then I think a couple other things I would say is, one, you have to set your team up for success. If you have an athletic director or a coach who maybe might overshare when they're nervous, that's not something that you're going to solve in the most stressful of situations. So you want to limit the conversations and really ensure that messaging from the institution is primarily coming through one venue and through one voice. And the other thing I would say, too, is that when those things happen, to begin to start thinking about as much transparency as is possible, because I think I lost count of the number of open records inquiries that the university received. It was, I think over 25. There's a good chance that some of those messages are going to come out anyway, so it's best to just be as transparent and deliver the message as best you can. And certainly for those of us who work at universities, that really is our job. We're there I work at a public university. Our job is to represent the public good. I work for the state of Texas, and my job is to best represent the institution in its perpetuity.
Thank you so much. And we're going to start our first question and answer session. Again, if you have any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to email me those questions at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com. That's mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com. I'm checking see whether we have any questions. We do not have any questions at this point. But again, remember, if you have any questions for our second and third question and answer session, please email them to me at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com, and I'll address them during our second question and answer session. Let's proceed with the program. And that involves legal issues and the actual investigation. As we talk about the legal issues and the actual investigation involving the rhabdo outbreak, Dr. Mendez-Grant, what fact-finding did Texas Women's University complete before Buckner, our law firm, started our external investigation?
So I mentioned earlier already that one of the very first things that I had asked our athletic director to do was developing the timeline and documenting the event, so that was something that the university did. Also, we did some air sampling. I mentioned in the different activities that our team was doing, they were traveling to compete with other teams, and so one of the things that they did ask us to do is to do some air sampling, and so we had participated with that. We also had developed some protocol to bring the students who were affected back to the team, and we were also medically monitoring their progress. We have a team physician. That team physician started to visit those students into the hospital, and we continued to monitor the students from the time they were in the hospital, after they were in the hospital, until they were eventually given medical clearance.
And you mentioned earlier in your answers in the prior sections that all the universities did fact-finding and were coordinating these investigations with the health department and the FDA, that there was still a need to do much more comprehensive investigation. What was the decision-making behind retaining an outside investigator?
So we felt that there were many reasons that we ultimately decided to go with an external investigator, and I'm going to try to hit on those. We wanted a sense of neutrality. We had a situation, so at TWU, our coach had actually started at the university as a student athlete, and over time was promoted until she was eventually serving as our head coach. It becomes difficult to be objective in the facts that surround a certain case, and that includes for the athletic director when you worked with people for very long periods of time and you're vested in their success. An external evaluator, in a sense, has no skin in the game. They are paid to represent the university, and they're paid to represent the university in a neutral manner. We wanted someone, of course, who had experience and an appreciation for athletics. We needed somebody who was versed and had experience with the NCAA and could reach potentially a defensible conclusion of the facts. We wanted to avoid conflicts of interest. To best protect the university, it was our opinion that by avoiding anyone who had a relationship with the university could be perceived as obscuring the facts. So we were concerned that if it was somebody internal, that there could be some type of conflict of interest. We wanted to establish, in the event that we needed it, that the university had done its due diligence and that the university was acting in its best way to be transparent. And finally, there was a resource issue. The reality is, an investigation is going to represent an additional task for someone to do. And we knew pretty immediately it was going to take days of testimony. The bottom line is, no one wants to incur the cost of retaining a lawyer to conduct an investigation, but there are very real and distinct advantages in doing so. And I guess I would argue it was really an investment in the university. Another important consideration is not just if you're going to conduct an investigation, but it would be who might do the investigation. The things that I would look for, and what I did look for, is how quickly can the investigation be completed? What are the time and the cost implications? Is a person available to conduct the investigation? And given the situation that your university might have, is there specific expertise that might be needed?
Okay. And when Texas Women's University retained us, Buckner, our law firm, how we approached the investigation was like we approach any investigation, and looking at it from a comprehensive perspective. And so we used a methodology that was designed to identify the cause of the outbreak. And we went in although the university had done prior work, and I know the health department had made an initial finding with its investigation, our purpose was not to look at what people had done in the past, but look at it and go into it with an objective mindset. So we utilize an investigative methodology and strategy designed to gather information to substantiate and refute all the possible causes of the outbreak. So we've initially developed a detailed investigation plan, which is based on research and advice from the firm's sports medicine consultant. We then retain an outside medical expert who had some experience in disease outbreaks, and we also obtained some additional investigative advice from him as we designed our investigative methodology. We reviewed the records previously obtained by the university, including tests of air samples, practice plans, food logs, and then we conducted extensive research into rhabdomyolysis, the disease itself, and consulted again with our experts, our internal and external experts, so that we realized we knew that we had the most up-to-date research in the area on that particular disease. Then from all that information, then we developed a rhabdomyolysis-specific investigation outline, or the questions that we were going to ask during our interview, so we made sure that our interviews asked questions that was supposed to elicit information about any possible cause of rhabdomyolysis. And there have been some speculation in the media that the rhabdomyolysis was caused by the practices. But as an independent investigator, you can't rule anything out. So in our research, we found scores of possible causes of rhabdo. So each of our interviews, we asked questions about any, even remote cause of rhabdo. Those questions were asked in the interviews. And then we also collected medical files from the affected student athletes, their medical files from the hospital, files that were already maintained by the university, and we forwarded that relevant medical data and information to our experts, our sports medicine consultant and our outside medical expert. And it's really ironic, our legal finding was very similar to the findings of our experts. So that meant that the information that we were collecting as lawyers was very consistent with the medical information that our experts were actually looking at. And one of the things that we also tracked on in each of our interviews was the urine color of the student athletes. So I could tell you by our questions each day of that week that Dr. Mendez-Grant talked about, what was the urine color for each student athlete on each day, and how much water were they consuming? What type of food were they consuming each day? And that was very important to our overall analysis of what was the cause of the rhabdomyolysis and when did the rhabdomyolysis actually occur. And so we did that because we were able to track that through their interview testimony and through their documentation. And then we prepared a report of our investigation based upon our analysis, our evaluation, and also developed recommendations so that rhabdo and other similar situations could be prevented on campus. Dr. Mendez-Grant, now that I went over what we did through our investigation, are there any issues relating to public consumption of knowledge that you did not realize would have occurred relating to the investigation?
So one note I thought you might find important is that going into this particular case, I thought my personal cell phone records would be immune to those open records requests. And we went to the state attorney general, and it turns out that because I'm a public official, that my personal cell phone records were not immune. So that's just something that I thought would be important information for the people listening in today.
Okay. Now we're going to start our second question-answer session. Again, if you have any questions, please email those questions to me at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com. That's mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com. We currently do not have any questions. However, if you have questions for our third question and answer session, again, you can email those to me at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com, and I'll address those questions during our final question and answer session. Let's proceed with the final segments of our program. And that section is post-investigation issues and corrective measures. Dr. Mendez-Grant, we outlined what happened at the beginning when the investigation, when the outbreak started, when the university was notified of the outbreak, what type of media messaging was done, and the actual investigation itself. What measures have the university implemented to address the actual investigation findings and the recommendations from Buckner?
So as part of the investigation, we asked Mr. Buckner to provide a set of recommendations based on the investigation. And there was an actual report that included 12 recommendations that the university received. It's our intention to implement all of those recommendations. I did not want to just read through the list today, but I picked a few and thought I could talk about them. We are completely committed to enhancing the education and training program on rhabdo. We have brought in speakers already to the university, and we've invited our student health services staff to join the athletic training staff. We also now require the review and approval of all fitness and conditioning tests by the strength and conditioning and athletic training staff based on industry standards. The review includes looking for any potential health issues for certain student athletes, and we look at things like vital signs during the preseason physical examinations. We are utilizing posters as a way to educate the students about their urine color for post-workout information. I mentioned in my very opening comments that we had a part-time strength and conditioning coach, where the university is in the process of phasing that coach in to be a full-time member of our athletic program. We have really done a much better job, I think, in terms of encouraging participation in summer and preseason conditioning programs, and we're using mobile technology to, to enhance the preparedness of their student athletes for the preseason period. We're looking at, and we will be implementing screening for the sickle cell trait during preseason physical examinations, and we're actually currently in discussions now with the hospital about how we're going to draw blood for those students, but if not, we already know that our student health clinic is going to be working with our student athletes. So that's just kind of naming some of the highlights, I guess.
And, I want to let everyone on the call know that the investigation report and our recommendations are included in the webinar handout that was linked in this morning's email to everybody. So you can take a look at the actual case, the investigation, the findings, and the recommendations that we made to Texas Women's University. Also included in that packet is a summary from a website on what is rhabdomyolysis, and we also included a series of PowerPoint slides from another presentation of a expert where they talk about how to conduct an investigation of a disease outbreak. So all those resources are available for everyone on the call, that if you have any type of disease outbreak, whether or not you conduct the investigation internally or externally, that you can use those materials as a reference if you have the unfortunate incident on your campus to have a disease outbreak. And finally, as we're wrapping up this section and concluding the program, Dr. Mendez-Grant, what other issues do you believe the participants on this call should be aware of concerning either rhabdomyolysis or any disease outbreak that may occur on a university campus?
So I don't know if everyone on the call knows, but when TW had this particular experience, it was only the second time with athletic programs that a women's program had that experience. So one of the things that happens is anytime that there's this cluster phenomenon for rhabdo, TW is going to be mentioned, and normally there's some additional inquiry that comes into the institution. So one thing is we received those recommendations. I thought it was important for the participants to know that, I mean, the ideal is you want people to read it and everybody to buy in and on their own go and implement each of the recommendations, but you really have a responsibility to ensure that those recommendations are being implemented in the way that could meet some additional scrutiny in the event there's things that happen. So I thought it was important to mention that. The other is that when there is a stressful situation, you'll find that there is a lot of potential dysfunction that's going to occur on the campus. When there's a crisis, the administration wants to be involved, and that can be very uncomfortable for the athletic department. It's important to maintain support from everyone at the institution during a time that's stressful. One of the things that I spent a lot of my time doing after the investigation is visiting with all of the shared governance kind of structures that are important to the institution. So Mr. Buckner gave us a set of recommendations. I went personally and visited with the student government, our student regent, the regents of the university, the faculty senate, the staff council, past athletic directors for the university, and athletic alumni. And I started each meeting by saying the events as they happened, and I asked each of those entities for their support as we were moving forward to implement the recommendations. And, you know, the response was really good, but I think it's important that you're not only transparent with your different, I guess with the public, but that you're also transparent with your constituencies to ensure that they continue their support for the athletic program as well as what you're trying to do at the institution.
Well, I appreciate you outlining that, and I think one of the final takeaways for me that I want to share with everyone on the call from the investigator side is, and this is just advice or recommendations to anyone on the call that's either conducting their own investigation on campus or has retained someone to do it for them so you can monitor what the investigator is doing, is one, you want to be creative. And not have a single-track mind as to what may be the cause of the outbreak. And in combination with what Texas Women's University did prior to our retention and what we did trying to uncover every possible cause of the outbreak so that when we did our findings, no one could say that we had a single-track mind on or preconceived notion about what occurred. And that gives legitimacy to any investigation. Second, no matter how smart that our investigators are, and I think we are, you still need to have a subject matter expert in that particular disease or has familiarity with that disease. And so no matter how much research that we did, and we did a lot of research, I know more about rhabdo now than I probably ever thought I was going to. But having a subject matter expert who could break down the medical data, who could share with me nuances that I didn't know about, who could talk to me about how to ask certain questions so I can get most useful medical information, that was invaluable to the investigation. I think it helped out the quality of the investigation. And thirdly, and it ties into the first 2 points, when we interviewed the student athletes, and sometimes we had parents sit in on the interviews, I could perceive from the parents and the student athletes that they appreciated the effort that the university was making, and that as Dr. Mendez-Grant was talking about transparency, they realized that the university, when they hired external investigator, that the university was serious about finding the cause of the outbreak and was being very transparent about what were the causes. I think that not only allowed us to get better responses from the student athletes and their parents and cooperation from those constituencies, but I think it also reduced any type of issues that may have come out of the investigation from anyone on campus. Dr. Mendez-Grant, before we close, are there any other points that you would like to share with the webinar participants?
No, I can't think of anything else.
Okay. And again, if anyone has any questions as we close, you can email those to me at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com. That's mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com. Before we proceed to our last question and answer session, I want to remind you, Buckner conducts complimentary webinars throughout the year for you and your staff. For our attorney participants, most of the monthly programs have received continuing legal education credits from at least one state bar association. The list of currently scheduled programs will be listed on our website, bucknersportslaw.com, and we're going to upload several programs for the remainder of the fall semester. So please pay attention to our website in the next couple of days. You can view the video of this webinar and other Buckner online workshops on our website, bucknersportslaw.com, or on our YouTube platform. And in order to find it, search for Michael Buckner Law on YouTube. Finally, for a reasonable fee, you can request a Buckner professional to conduct a program on the topic of your choice on your campus through the firm's Campus Speaker Series. For more information on this service, please contact us at country code 1-954-941-1844. We will start our third and final question and answer session. If you have any questions, please email those questions to me at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com. There are no questions in the queue, so we will conclude our program. But before we conclude our program, if there are any other questions that you may have after the program, please email those questions to me at mbuckner@bucknersportslaw.com, and I will forward those questions to Dr. Mendez-Grant, and we will prepare answers to those questions, and we'll send it out to everyone on the call. Before we conclude the session, I would like to invite you to share your comments and input on today's program by completing the email into us the evaluation form, which will be emailed to you within the next 30 minutes. Thank you for your participation during today's webinar. We look forward to your participation during our next set of events, which will be listed on our website at bucknersportslaw.com. So be on the lookout for the announcement. Thanks again, and this concludes our session.